Hello everyone and welcome to Transatlantic Watch Party, a podcast about movies in which Dan in Canada and myself, Cara, in the UK, watch something separately and then get together to discuss it. And this week we are discussing The Insider from 1999, directed by Michael Mann and written by Michael Mann and Eric Roth, based on Marie Brenner's 1996 Vanity Fair article, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and it was nominated for 7 Oscars. Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role to Russell Crowe, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, and Best Sound.
Wow, I had no idea. Did it win any of those? Do you know?
I don't think it did.
Well, it's an honor just to be nominated, right? But
what I find funny about that is I think Al Pacino is the lead. I think Russell Crowe is...
It's kind of
it can be a double lead, but the fact that it opens with Al and it closes with Al makes it feel very much to me like Al is the conduit for this movie, because also he is the conduit for Jeffrey Wigand's story.
Yeah, exactly. No, I get what you're saying. I think it's one of those things with the nominations, they can really get pretty weird with these supporting actors and actors, because I think even this year, One Battle After Another, there's some nominations in there. They're like, why these guys, some of these people aren't even in the movie that long, and yet they're still being nominated. I can't remember. It's either Benicio del Toro or Sean Penn's in it more, but Benicio del Toro's barely in it, but he's still nominated.
Well, we always have the very famous there's always the discussion about who's got the nominations, who's got the Oscar for the shortest screen time. I think it's Judi Dench.
Of course. For Shakespeare in Love?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there is, I can't remember who it is, but who's got, it's Anthony Hopkins, Silence of the Lambs, leading actor.
Yes. Yeah, but he's not he's not the lead in that movie, for sure.
What does this guy have to say that threatens these people?
Well, it isn't cigarettes are bad for you.
He's only the key witness in the biggest health reform issue in U.S. history.
He met an insider who was ready to reveal what no one else could tell.
I was told, don't talk.
Al Pacino.
The more truth he tells, the worse it gets.
Russell Crowe.
I told the truth.
It's not the point whether you tell the truth or not.
The Insider, a Michael Mann film, rated R. Starts Friday, November 5th.
After seeking the expertise of former big tobacco executive Jeffrey Wigand, seasoned TV producer Lowell Bergman suspects a story lies behind Wigand's reluctance to speak. Really? How can you tell? As Bergman persuades Wigand to share his knowledge of industry secrets, the two must contend with the courts and the corporations that stand between them and exposing the truth. All the while, Wigand must struggle to maintain his family life amidst lawsuits and death threats. I loved this movie. I had a great time watching it. Thank you for getting us there very, very tangentially through Breckin Meyer, who is in this for like a fraction of a second. You said blink and you'll miss him, and I literally did. I'm like, wait, was that him? I had to rewind it and look. And yes, it was him.
It's not even like a cameo. I don't know if he even has a line. And it's, you see like his leg, and then you see the front of him as he walks out of the house, and that is it. So thank you, Breckin Meyer, for being in 0.5 seconds of this film so that I got to watch it.
Yeah, it's great. And I definitely have not seen it since I saw it in the theater. I definitely saw this in the theater. I loved it. I remember thinking it was a great film at the time, and then I never came back to it. I think I was a very different person when I saw this in the theater the first time. I definitely would have left that theater and had a cigarette afterwards because I smoked at the time. So that's an interesting perspective to come at this. And this is much more interesting to me now because I've since worked in the media. And so I have some experience, at a local level, not at the level that is discussed in this movie, but I have certainly been aware of all this stuff, and I'm much more aware of how this stuff works now than it was back when I first saw it. So I really had a great time watching it.
Well, in terms of media stuff, I've never worked in the media, but I have just finished watching The Newsroom. So this, seeing them putting together this thing and the producer trying to think and the sources and, making sure of it, and then corporate getting involved, that I was like, oh, it's The Newsroom.
It is, absolutely, for sure. And that's, again, but this came before The Newsroom, right? So this is a really great film in showing that conflict between corporations. And it's prophetic because this actually happened pretty recently in the news. We can talk about that a little bit later when we get to that part, but it's like just a really, really interesting story. This is a film, I might have noted, it's people sitting around talking. What did you say? People sitting around peopling, whatever you say, way you say it. But it's interesting. Every conversation is interesting in this movie. And
Oh yeah, no, this is not a people being people film. This has like a very intense, driven plot point to get through. Ladder 49 is just people peopling. It just happens that those people are firefighters. But it's a sort of a generic thing, being a firefighter. It's very ephemeral, whereas this is being a whistleblower is hard, bloody work.
Yeah, and it takes a toll on your life, right? And I think one thing, but that being said, this film does a really good job in certain moments of showing some very human moments in this story for these characters. And so again, it's just a very, very well made movie. I forgot it was Michael Mann, who's a great director. He's done all kinds of work. This would have been right after they did Heat, which was his previous film with Al Pacino. So they'd worked together before. And he's just just very well shot, and it was deserving of all those nominations for cinematography, editing, and sound, because it's very good in all those respects.
I was interested in the sound one. I hadn't really thought about the sound production in it. I think of that more for sort of like effects driven films, and this very much isn't.
I heard this is in terms of the clips and the way they put together the story and the just the different environments that they are in, like on the fucking beach for some reason. That whole scene, I'm like, get off the beach. She's never gonna hear you. Get off the beach. What are you doing? He's like,
yeah,
hello, you're breaking up, and he's walking away. He's walking further out into the ocean. What are you doing there? Do you not understand how phones work? So anyway, that was a fun moment. But yes, that's probably it. It's probably they're able to maintain all these conversations through all these different places as part of the sound design for this.
Yeah.
All right, should we get to the characters?
Absolutely.
Starting with Al Pacino, not that movie, but we'll probably make those jokes several times throughout this, as he plays Lowell Bergman, who is a 60 Minutes producer. Russell Crowe as Dr. Jeffrey Wigand, the whistleblower, and this is based on a real person, correct?
Yes, most of these people are real people. Yeah.
Oh yes, of course. We have Canadian treasure Christopher Plummer as Mike Wallace, a 60 Minutes correspondent, and then Philip Baker Hall as Don Hewitt, who's the executive producer for 60 Minutes. And that's another guy who see every movie. He's been in so many movies. He's one of my favorite character actors. I love that guy.
Well, we also have Diane Venora as Leanne Wigand, and I was very excited to see her because she is Mrs. Capulet in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. And I adore her in that. She's absolutely brilliant. We have, and I wrote down his name so I will pronounce it correctly, Colm Feore as Richard Scruggs, a lawyer taking on the tobacco industry. Interesting point about the actual lawyer, Richard Scruggs, is that he has since been disbarred due to conspiracy to bribe and influence circuit judges in 2007 and 2009, and he served 6 years in prison. So that is quite the turnaround for this guy. This guy is like, like quite a big hero in this sort of story. We also have Bruce McGill as Ron Motley. He's brilliant. I love him in everything.
It's my favorite.
And then Michael Gambon as Thomas Sandifer Brown and Williamson's CEO. He's only got a couple of scenes, but he is Michael Gambon, so I thought I should mention.
Well, and he's British, is that not right? But he's playing this kind of southern, like evil corporate tobacco guy, right? So he does a fantastic job. And I'll just come back to it's Colm Feore is how I say that, and he is also Canadian treasure. He's a very well known Canadian actor.
Is that not how I said it?
You say Colm, maybe accent.
Well, I looked up at him on saying it.
Oh, is that right? Oh, maybe it is. But I've always known him as Colm Feore. He played, and he's a Canadian actor. He's been in many Canadian films, and most notably, he played Pierre Trudeau in like the story about Pierre Trudeau's life. He was one of our prime ministers, and so I think of him as Pierre Trudeau sometimes when I see him in movies. But he is ever present in the 90s and a lot of Hollywood movies. He pops up in these kind of little bit roles because he's an actor trying to make his way, Canadian actor trying to make his way in Hollywood in the 90s, and that's why I call him a Canadian treasure. Any Canadian actor that makes it to Hollywood is a Canadian treasure, in my opinion. That's why.
So is that Trudeau related to Justin Trudeau?
Oh yeah, it's his dad. Yeah, his father was prime minister. He was prime minister.
Oh, Nepo baby. So that's the people in it. And then what I've done is I've written the most lightweight rundown we've ever had, because I was trying to write it and I was like, I'm just giving everything away. So
okay, yeah, I mean, it's just you just kind of go in like these three sections. These are acts, basically the three acts of the story, kind of thing, is what you've broken it down here as.
yeah.
But what I want to start with is now you've got the this is a drop in the bucket as far as the top scene here, or the start of the thing. But my first note here, as we started watching this, I'm like, is this the right movie? How
Yes.
am I thinking? Have I turned on like Zero Dark 30 or something by accident? I had to stop and check and make sure I was watching the right thing. Because we start in like the Middle East somewhere, and it is Al Pacino. You're right. And at first, I'm not even sure who it is under that. He's got the thing around his face. He's got the blindfold on, so we can't see the face. And I wasn't sure based on the hair. I remembered that Russell Crowe had white hair, so I figured, okay, I guess this is Al Pacino, but he's got his face covered. He does that entire opening scene blindfolded, right? That whole thing where he's interviewing, and this all seems so relevant, getting recent events. Hey, didn't it?
Yeah.
This feels like it happened like yesterday, given like all the stuff that's been happening in the Middle East lately. So this is a very relevant film, even though it was made 27 years ago. So yeah, and then the other thing I noticed, so that was that first scene was very intense, but we established Al Pacino's character. He travels all the way out to, I don't know where he is actually, but it's somewhere, and he's interviewing somebody who's involved with Hezbollah. And he's saying, you should trying to convince this guy to go in the air with Mike Wallace for an episode of 60 Minutes. And he agrees to it. And so then they say, okay, Mike's going to come out and interview. And I love it. The thing is just like, oh yeah, he's on. It's one phone call. He's like, we're on. And that's it. I'm like, no. You got to tell him what happened. You got to relay the conversation. You got to tell him what he's got to do. You have to go through the plan. And throughout this movie, there's a lot of that happening where they talk through a lot of aspects of the story, which is the normal like that's what they do in journalism, right? Everyone talks through everything to try to figure things out and logically work through a story. And this is like, just we're on. I guess that maybe they'd already done that, but it seemed more like a spy thing to do than a journalism thing to do.
Oh, I just liked the guy who was trying to set up the generator. So he was like immediately like, okay, we're in this room and I'm just, and he's still got his because I think it ends with Al Pacino going, I have one weird question for you.
Yes.
And the guy has left. Everybody's gone. The room is empty. And so he takes his blindfold off, and his compatriot is like sitting on a sofa over in the corner, still with his blindfold on. He's like, take your blindfold off. And then immediately, he's like looking around and seeing how the technical aspects are going to work. So he did have like a guy with him, to know that sort of stuff. So I think when he needed to make that phone call to Mike Wallace, maybe that was the only thing he had to tell Mike Wallace.
Maybe, right. He's got to worry about where he is and what's going on, and he's just gone through kind of the traumatic experience of being whisked off to some strange location. He's got to figure out where he is, right? That's basically he's got to do that. Okay, so then we're introduced to Jeffrey Wigand, Russell Crowe, and he is a CEO, or he's an executive with a tobacco company, and he has just been. I guess it's not apparent immediately that he was fired, but he comes. I don't remember the first scene.
We see him packing up. We just see him putting some stuff in his briefcase. Everyone else is sort of having a party in the lab. And so I thought because, and I will say this, the surprising thing to me in this movie was that he's kind of an accidental whistleblower. He doesn't go out of his way to search out a guy to tell stuff to, So when I first saw it and he was like putting documents in his briefcase and walking out and security were looking at him, I thought this is him preparing to whistleblow and they are suspicious. And he goes home, and chats with his daughter and talks to his wife and doesn't say anything until much, much later. And it turns out he was fired. But yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Like presses him on it. And I just have to say, his youngest daughter is played by who I think of as the little Pepsi girl. She was in a series at this very same age. She looks identical to when she was in these ads, a series of Pepsi ads in the North America here. And so she was, I probably would have thought that at the time as well, because she would have been all over the place, getting lots of work as a young actress. And she's very cute in this. And then his older daughter has asthma, and again we have this very human moment, this very dramatic moment when she's playing with a teddy or something with a toy that was dusty, and she inhaled some of the dust, and that's activated her asthma. So he comes in and he's all in control of it, right? He's okay, here we go. He goes and gets her breather, and he's got all the medicine, and he's ready to go, and he's speaking very calmly to her and just explaining what's happening in a very calm and even tone. You can tell he's a scientist, I think, based on this. Right, how he comes at this very logically and explains to her it's okay, we're giving you the medicine, and kind of gets her to calm down through that.
And he like explains all the stuff that's happening in her lungs and how it all works, and like the branches of a tree, and it was really good. It was a very good way of sort of calming down a child, sort of giving her something to focus on. What I liked was that he walked into the house and he sees his daughter and she's watching cartoons, and he says, "It's a little early for cartoons, isn't it?" As he pours himself an alcoholic beverage.
Yes,
like,
that's right.
If it's too early for cartoons, it's too early for a drink, sir.
Well, absolutely. But he does, as he admits in later in the film, have a drinking problem, right? He does drink too much. We see him drinking quite a bit throughout this. So yeah, it's a good introduction to the character. It is revealed that he is fired. It seems like, again, we don't get the exact details of it at this time, but he's not happy about it. But he's got a good severance package. Like, he just tells his wife that, they're going to pay us out for however long, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, he'll get severance pay, and he's got medical benefits, and that's what's most important to him because his daughter has these health problems, right? And so he needs that benefit. This is, again, the problem in America with the privatized healthcare, is that they have you need to have coverage through an employer, or otherwise you're screwed. Otherwise it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars.
I just wrote in my notes, tying your ability to get healthcare to your job is disgusting.
It is, yeah, that's horrible. It's a horrible situation to be in. Sure.
And the better job you have, the better insurance you get. Like, who thought of it's such an insane idea that the medical system over in America, and people want to bring it in here, and I cannot imagine anything worse.
No, absolutely not. It's a horrible system. Just watch The Pit, and you'll see that.
Which I do.
For you. Okay, what else? What's the next part of this? I wrote down, now we kind of cut back to Lowell, and I love that at various points in this movie he's working in other stories. Like, he's a producer, he's got multiple stories on the run, right? So we see him going at the first one where they're talking to Hezbollah, then we cut to him working on this story about Canada, and it comes up a couple times in the film, like, yay, Canada. And if the story is what I think they're talking about, Oka, they're talking about all these interesting things that happen in Canada. And I think it is a story about the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and corruption in that organization, which is a thing that happened and was brought to light after this movie came out. That they were a whole bunch of people got fired, of course. The organization has been completely rebuilt now that it's all been exposed. But at one time, it was a very corrupt organization. It did horrible, horrible things. And so that's the story they're putting together on the side of it. So they come back to it at the end. I love that they refer to it at the end. So
but did you love it because they weren't always the most complimentary about Canada? There was a line where Al Pacino just says, "Are all Canadian things boring?" And I was like, "Oh, Dad's not gonna like that."
Well, but that's the common view from America, right? And that's part of what we deal with. And to be fair, yes, that is true. That is a true thing about Canada. Most of the things here are boring, and that's fine with me.
Boring is underrated.
That's right. Right.
I'm all for boring. Yeah, so he gets the documents. The documents turn up on his doorstep, which I assumed were from Weigand, but
yes. Yes. Again, I thought it was very confusing, and this is completely again who sent these original documents. I don't think we ever find out, but it's somebody in the inside, some other insider sends him a bunch of, and it's about it actually has to do with fire safety, right? So it's about I guess the flammability and leaving cigarettes, how many fires are caused by unlit or lit cigarettes, that kind of stuff. I'm sure that's like part of the thing. And so he just calls up again. I love all the. This is 1999. This is a very specific time and place before the internet. Right, you can think about how different it would have been if this had been an internet era with all these of getting out. But this is like so. It's a lot of phone calls. So he's on a pay phone. He calls up somebody else. He's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, who do I got? All these papers. Who do I? You know."
They've got pages. Like only a couple of characters have a mobile phone. We do get an email, like one email in the whole film, and it's not a nice one.
Very dramatic email. Yes. Yeah, and a fax conversation in a little, the payphone part. I love the payphones. We come to that throughout. But basically, he asks one of his contacts that he says all this technical paperwork. He doesn't know what it means, and he wants like an expert to kind of translate this for him and tell him what the story is. Tell him what this person is trying to tell him about this. And so he gets Jeffrey Wygant's number from this guy and calls him immediately and says, but gets like the cold shoulder from his wife. Like, it's so weird how they're saying, no, he's not talking to you. Boom.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Bob. My name is Lowell Bergman.
Did you say Bergman?
No, Bergman. Bergman. I'm a producer with 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes.
Yeah.
60 Minutes, a television show?
Yes.
He doesn't want to talk to you.
How does he know he doesn't want to talk to me? He doesn't know what I'm calling him about.
He doesn't care to know.
And so for a journalist to just all of a sudden call and get somebody to say, what? I doesn't know why I'm calling. Why would he not want to talk to me? You know
Now,
that person. Hi.
I read the article.
Okay.
Well, I read half of the article because it was on the Vanity Fair website, which is a mess.
Oh no.
It's, you have to scroll down, and then there's a gap, and there's an ad in it, and then it updates, and you're in the wrong part of the thing. It's abysmal. So anyway, I read half of the article before I went. I can't look at this screen anymore. And he rang for like a week. He was ringing for like a week. And in the film obviously cuts everything down into like squeezes it down so it looks like it happens in the space of a week. But yeah, he called multiple times and she kept saying he doesn't want to talk to you. So I think Wygant did know that he was going to be reaching out to him. So eventually he called at midnight. That's how he eventually got hold of him, because he thought, oh, it's midnight, he might pick up the phone, and that's what happened.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, because the way it happens in the film is like she gives him the cold shoulder and hangs up. He calls back and just leaves a simple message explaining what he is, who he is, and what he wants. And it's very like, I just want you to look at these papers. And this has nothing to do with anything that happened. He doesn't know why guy's just been fired from his job. He doesn't know anything like this. But the way they act is so weird and suspicious that you know something's up. Like you just know something's up, right? And so, and he gets and because he says in the message, if you have a fax, send it now. I'm like, oh, faxes, remember faxes? When this is like a normal thing for a person to have like a fax machine in their home, you can send each other messages. And so he writes something on the thing. I can't remember what he writes, but he sends a fax message to him. And then Wygant faxes back, I can't talk to you. Like a very weird response. Again, this is so weird, right? That he's responding in this way over just some random papers from a different company. It's not even from the same company that he works for, right? This is Philip Morris, I think these papers are from.
Yes.
And he works for a different company, Brown and Williamson, which I think is a fictional company. Is Brown and Williamson a real company?
I think it was real. I think Thomas Sandifer might be a real person.
I don't know. I don't know how they navigate that.
My assumption was that was going to be the bit where they couldn't use the actual person's name, but and the faxes that struck me. I mean, I get it. It's so ironically enough, it's so there's no paper trail because you can just burn them. But and I don't know whether fax machines have a memory or anything. But if he is already feeling relatively paranoid, Jeffrey Wygant, then he's like, maybe they tapped my phone line and I can't talk to this person on the phone in my house, so I'm going to do this thing with the fax machine. But my thing is that fax machines don't go, this is the size of the message, so this is the size of paper I will print. They just print an A4 paper. So if you've just written no, an entire thing of paper comes out, and I'm like, what a waste!
That's right. But I just love it. I thought it might be to like circumvent any listening devices they might have. This phone's being tapped, because at this point he's starting to kind of become suspicious of being followed, and like there's some weird things happening to Wygant. He's like I can't remember when this happens, but there's a guy like following him, right? Like no, we're not to the golf thing yet. I know that he does some golf things later on.
Yes, and it's not. It's even after that when they've moved house that he thinks there's someone following. Just to let you know, Brown and Williamson is a company. I'm not sure whether Sandiford is a real person.
Okay. But anyway, they decide to meet at a hotel, basically, which is a little sketchy, but whatever. It's an anonymous place. He can get a room. They can go up and have a private conversation in a hotel room, and basically he gives them the documents, and that's it. But it's so weird how he acts when he gets there. Like he just like, I can only talk to you about this and nothing else. And he's like, well, what else do you have to? He's like, as far as what else do you have to say? Like he clearly has something he wants to talk about, but he can't. He has this confidentiality agreement, and this is what's holding him back. He's feeling very, very compelled to stay quiet because he signed his confidentiality agreement with his company. He cannot disclose anything from when he worked there, and he's going to honor that. He says at this time he's going to honor that agreement.
Yeah.
That right.
And if he just, because this is where he says this is a drop in the bucket when he's looking at these documents. He says he has in the documents, Lowell does, and Wygant looks at them and says, well, I can explain to you these in layman's terms. And that is all Lowell wants him to do. He hasn't asked him anything else.
Yeah.
And then he goes, oh, I can tell you these in layman's terms, but I can't tell you anything else I was working on because I have a confidentiality agreement. And I'm like, dude, if you just told him what the documents meant, none of the rest of it would have happened.
He actually says this is a drop in the bucket, right? He uses that term, and he's like, that this is like, he indicates that there's so much more going on beyond this issue, right? And so it's just like, how can you not pursue that?
And I wonder, like, we never really get into the nitty-gritty of why 60 Minutes were doing this particular article, because it does seem like he was looking into how many like house fires are set by people leaving their cigarettes out and how fast do they burn, and all this sort of stuff. That is what the report appears to be on. And so it sort of made me think, were they going after the tobacco industry, like catching Al Capone for his taxes? Like, we can't get them on the cancer thing. We can't get them on the health risks because they just won't comply with anything. They'll just do, what does the guy call it? The I don't know litany. They just pretend they've never looked into anything, and they don't do any research. And so they just keep saying, well, I don't know if it's addictive. So they're like, maybe we can go after them for, well, your cigarettes kill people in another way. So I wonder if that's where they were going. And then Wygant turned up, and they were like, oh, now we have a guy who can give us the stuff we really want.
Mm-hmm. And so
it's a very interesting turnaround for, that Wygant has totally walked into.
But he seems to be wanting to do it. Like, the whole movie, he's kind of this conflicted character of like, should I or shouldn't I do this? Because he realizes it's going to completely upend his life, his family. He's going to lose all his medical support and everything that he has if he does this. But he also feels compelled to bring this information to the American people, right? To tell everybody what this company is really doing and how they really create these products and market these products.
And that is the one thing in the film I didn't believe. I didn't think he was compelled to do anything. I didn't feel like there was a drive there. I really enjoyed watching it because one of my favorite films is Erin Brockovich. And that is all about her absolute drive to get the right thing to happen here. She's discovered something terrible is going on and she wants to fix it. And Wygant didn't do that. He didn't walk out in a huff and go, oh my God, everything here is terrible and I'm going to go to the press and tell everyone and make sure everyone knows. So the way he sort of he does say, skipping to the end, he accuses Lowell of manipulating him.
Mhm.
And I wrote down, I'm with Wygant on this. Lowell saw the opportunity, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but Lowell saw the opportunity for a massive story which should be told. And Lowell knew it should be told. And he says to him at some point, like, I was just greasing the rails for you to say yes. There was a guy who wanted to say yes, and I let him say yes. And I just didn't really feel that. Every time we saw Jeffrey, he was just a guy that stuff was happening to. And well done for him for going through with it. Incredibly brave thing to do. But it was a really interesting thing to watch a guy who hadn't been massively driven to do this from the beginning, end up in this situation.
Yeah, I want to talk to you.
Good, I want to talk to you. This is
I
my
did
house.
not
In front of my
harm
wife,
you.
my kids.
I did not give you up to anyone.
What
I'm here
business do we have?
to straighten something out with you. Right here, right now.
You didn't mention my name. You haven't talked to anybody about me.
What am I gonna mention
Wyatt
your
Brown
name
and Williamson. No, I spoke
How
to
the hell do I know about Brown?
It happened
and
just
Wilson?
after I talked to
I
you.
don't know.
I
What
do
do you
not
care?
like coincidence.
Well, I don't like paranoid accusations. I'm a journalist. Think. Use your head. How do I operate as a journalist? By screwing the people who could provide me with information before they provided me with it.
You came all the way down here to tell me that?
No, I did not. Big tobacco is a big story, and you got something important to say, I can tell. But yes, I did. I came all the way down here to tell you. Story, no story. Fuck your story. I don't burn people.
Part of it is he's the kind of guy, he doesn't like being told what to do. He admits that he gets angry and he has emotional problems when he's put in weird situations and stressful situations. And what happens after he meets with them, he does initially say no and say, no, I'm not going to, I'll just do this. And that's it. He takes the stuff and he leaves. But then he gets pulled into his office again to talk about an addition. Like they want to bring him in, they want to make an addendum to his confidentiality agreement and expand the definition of what he's not allowed to talk about, basically. And that's when things get really weird. I think that's part of what like makes him decide to blow the whistle, because they're trying to manipulate him, right? They're trying to make him feel like he shouldn't say anything. And there's this part where he says, like, again, this is what's his name, Michael Gambon, who was the CEO of the Brown and Williamson. He's so good. He says, he's talking about his golf game. This is when his golf game first comes up and how good of a golfer he is. And he says it's spooky how he can concentrate, and he just kind of like talks about his, but he like, it's a good quality, but he talks about it in a negative way, kind of thing. The way he frames that, which I thought was quite interesting. And the other observation I had from this scene, and this movie has so many little characters that are like well-known actors in it, and there's a ton of them coming later, but this is the first one. It was Travis from WKRP. Gary Sandy is the lawyer who explains to him what happens. But when he says, well, what happens if I don't sign this? And then they turn to this other lawyer and he turns around and he explains what happens to him if he doesn't sign the thing. And it's Travis, who is the manager of the radio station at WKRP. I love it.
I don't know what that is, but that's exciting.
American TV show about radio. It's a very good comedy. And it was hilarious because he's not really known for anything else. Again, he probably had this big part in the sitcom in the 80s and then didn't do much else. And then all of a sudden, Michael Mann's, like, I don't know how he gets a role in a Michael Mann film, but there's so many little character actors in this. There's a lot of places like, oh, after watching this film, I have to admit.
That entire scene, I was just fuming through the whole thing because I was like, surely you can't do this. Like, this can't be legal. To like, you've already fired him. He doesn't work for you. He signed everything he needed to sign. You can't now come after him and change his agreement and say, we'll not honor the agreement we both signed if you now don't do something else. And I was so angry. And this is the way that Lowell sort of thinks he needs to handle Wygant with kid gloves and like look after him and make sure he's okay and ask him about his family and stuff. No, all he should do is tell Wygant he can't do something, because that is the way that man, he is so stubborn that every time he's told, no, we're going to come after you if you do this, he's like, well, fuck you. And
Well,
that's every decision he makes is due to something like that happening. It's brilliant.
the quote is "fuck it," is what he says several times during the film, and then he does what he wants to do. But I also think this is the company trying it several times to bully him. Like they travel, like there's a couple different ones where they're just flat out bullying him into doing what they want him to do. And this is like the first instance of that. And he's like, no, absolutely, I'm not going to do this. So then, of course, he goes back to what's his name, and says, I'll do it, right? And so what they talk about before we get to the scene, they do talk about him. They want to get it part of public record. So then they get in touch with Colmfior and sorry, what's his name again?
Bruce McGill.
Bruce McGill, who are
And
the
Mark
lawyer.
Morrison, who I think Mike Moore, who is the Attorney General or the District Attorney, whatever he was, who is playing himself. That's the real guy.
Oh, that was interesting. Okay, he was a pretty good actor, I thought, for a real guy. Couldn't really tell that. He did kind of act like a politician though, so that's probably just him doing his own thing. But yeah, so they have that lovely breakfast conversation about this, where he pops in.
Yeah, because the team at 60 Minutes are discussing it, and that's when we get the guy saying it's the "we don't know" litany, and I loved that line because you should know. It's your industry. You should know everything about it. Like if you are a tobacco industry, as they are, and you have all these scientists and you do all this research to make this product better, the other thing you should be legally required to do is to know if it hurts people. It is astonishing to me that people can go in front of Congress and just go, hey.
Yeah.
Like it's not their responsibility. And that is, that meeting is where they're like, how can we get around, how can we circumvent this confidentiality agreement? And one of the guys in the news team, one of the producers probably or associate producers, is like, if we get it on the public record, then it's out in the public anyway, so we can't really, and the other guy goes, does he have good lawyers? And Lowell's like, I don't think he has any lawyers. So then they find someone who has a case against the tobacco industry, and it's these guys in Mississippi. And they're like, hey, if we give you this guy for a deposition, we think that's going to help you and it's going to help us. It's very, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, but it works, right? And these guys are desperate for a good witness to actually give them some information because they're struggling in their case. At one point, we learned that their own governor or someone has ordered them to stop or has sued them to.
Yeah, that happens later. Yeah, their governor is like, we're going to shut this down.
Yeah, they're already facing all these obstacles.
What I like through the film is that we know there's the idea of obstacles, and we get the conversation about how they're going to expand his confidentiality agreement and all this kind of stuff, but a lot of it is like paranoia on Jeffrey's behalf, not unjustified paranoia, but it's this idea of the walls closing in on him. But we get this incredible final third of the film where all of the actual obstacles come in, the smear campaign and the governor stopping the lawsuit and all this sort of stuff. The actual walls are being put up. The corporate comes in and says, you can't air it. It's so good. Like the final sort of 40 minutes of the film is just, what I like? You get on the train and you don't get off. And that the final 40 minutes of this film is so that, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a very well built, structurally built film. Like they don't actually reveal what it is that he knows until like well into the movie, right? This whole time you're like, what is it that you know? What is it you have to tell us? And we don't find out. And it's like, because Al Pacino's character doesn't find out, right? So basically we have to get Wygant comfortable enough that he will agree to tell them. And so then he does. They fly to New York to tape the interview. He doesn't tell his wife about the interview, which is just the stupidest thing. Like she's blindsided. They're out at dinner. Like, did you think it wasn't going to come up? What's going on there? And he just didn't tell her. I guess she thought they're going there for a nice little vacation or something, or for preliminary stuff, not an actual interview. Maybe, I don't know.
Yes, and something that I was interested in was the fact that Wygant used to work in the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
So he used to work for like Pfizer and people who dealt with that kind of thing and made Tylenol and all that kind of stuff. probably therefore Tylenol. I don't know.
Well, no, he's saying it's like a very specific case about Tylenol when there was a threat of products being poisoned, and at that time, that CEO, and it's a famous case of a CEO pulling product from the shelves, putting people above profit because of the danger of whereas you hear of things like car companies. Remember the Ed Norton in Fight Club where he's like calculating the risks, and if it's cheaper just to settle the court cases, they don't do a recall, all that kind of stuff of corporations cutting costs and just putting profit first. That's the kind of company he wants to work for. That's the kind of companies he was working for. Healthcare related is presumably good.
And so now he's gone into tobacco and lost his job there. Healthcare won't take him back.
No,
because he
it's
switched sides on them.
Yeah.
And before they go to dinner, there is a point where Lowell and Wigand have dinner, and Lowell is talking to him about like, eventually they're going to do a smear campaign, so you have to tell me everything. That's not how he words it, but that's what he's getting at. And Wigand says, I was arrested for shoplifting, but it was a mistake. I did this. I drink too much sometimes. I'm stubborn, so he's telling him some stuff. And then he's like, but what do I get out? Why am I doing this?
You go public and 30 million people hear what you gotta say. Nothing, I mean nothing, will ever be the same again. You believe that?
No.
You should. Because when you're done, a judgment is gonna go down in a court of public opinion, my friend. And that's the power you have.
You believe that?
I believe that. Yes, I believe
You believe that because you get information out to people, something happens.
Yes.
Maybe that's just what you've been telling yourself all these years to justify having a good job. Having status. Or maybe for the audience, it's just voyeurism, something to do on a Sunday night. And maybe it won't change a fucking thing. And people like myself and my family are left hung out to dry, used up, broke.
And Lowell accuses him of cheap skepticism. And I got so mad at him because this guy is putting everything on the line for you. His family, his career, his well-being, his life, possibly. And you're accusing him of cheap skepticism just because he wants to know what your references are. I was so mad at Lowell at that point.
It's a perfect like snobby journalist, right? Like, and he's 60 Minutes. They spent a lot of time. We're the best, the highest rated. They spend a lot of time pumping up 60 Minutes in this movie, and it's like they really do have that opinion of themselves. They really do think they're above everything, and they're there to bring the truth to the people and to like expose all the horrible things happening in the world. And that's his only goal in this. That's, I guess, his Lowell's only motivation is to get this out.
And it does come up again with Mike Wallace when Leanne, who in the real world is called Lucretia, so I don't know why they changed that character's name. But anyway, Leanne, Wigand's wife, she discovers that he is doing the taping, and she leaves the restaurant. And Wigand goes after her, or she goes up to the bar, and Wallace is like, "What's happening here? Like, what's wrong with them?" And Lowell says they are ordinary people under extraordinary pressure. And I was like, this is, it's smug, elite newspaper man that he doesn't know. He just doesn't get what this guy is doing. And we hear it later that Wallace, when they, spoiler alert, when they say they're not going to show the piece, he says to Lowell, I don't want to spend the end of my days wandering around the wilderness of National Public Radio. Oh, great principles there, sir. You've had a perfectly good life. You've had, you've worked hard and you've achieved great things, and you're probably very financially comfortable. And you do not understand ordinary people under extraordinary pressure. You cannot know what it is like for this man. You wouldn't stand up to your executive producer. This guy is standing up to the entire tobacco industry.
Yeah, it's a very selfish attitude to have about him, and there's nobody's asking him to do that. Like, he is at this point, I think he makes a comment of being 78 years old, and he can retire. Mike Wallace worked well into his 80s and should have retired way before. Like, honestly, these guys work till they're dead, basically. That's kind of the mentality they have, though. They're gonna just keep doing this until they're done, and that's his mentality. I'm just gonna keep doing this job, exposing these things. And he's worried about losing his job, I think, and he's worried about the company folding. He doesn't want to go anywhere else, is what he says. He's a very snobby view of public radio, and I don't like that. I think that, but it's also very common. It's not unusual for people in kind of like the quote unquote profitable wing of news media to look down on the nonprofit part of it, right? It's
Yeah.
not. It's a different motivation.
And also clinging on to power, like
Yes.
I get it. Everybody does it. I understand why that happens. The other thing that happens before they go to dinner is he gets the death threat on the email and finds a bullet in his mailbox.
Yeah.
And so he calls Lowell about it because he doesn't know who else to talk to about anything. Lowell is his only guy, And so Lowell's like, you need to call the FBI. So he does, and the FBI treat him like a criminal.
Yeah.
And
They
they
want to
like,
check his gun.
take his, computer away. And his neighbors are standing out on their lawns, like watching all of this happen. And they are absolutely, it looks like he is being investigated. And these are his new neighbors. They've moved house, So this is awful for him. Lowell calls his mate in the FBI. This was a brilliant moment and very important for the end of the film. And I'd forgotten the conversation that they'd had. And so I was a bit confused at the end. But he calls his guy in the FBI and he's like, I'm getting two things, pissed off and curious, which is a brilliant line because he's saying, your FBI guys, who has offered them a contract for when they leave the FBI? Like, these tobacco people can give anybody money.
Yeah, exactly. They're hiring his former boss, who's then reaching out to him, and he basically spells it all out and says, "This is how this happened." Right? So,
Yeah.
but it's a great moment. You're right. I love that scene. That's a great little thing. So the death threat. I mean, that is the most dramatic email I've ever seen.
What are you cooking?
I'm cooking pasta primavera.
Oh, I love that stuff.
I'm going to have to go downstairs.
Like with the animation, I mean, that person's not only very like obviously very evil to try and suggest that, but also very skilled in flash animation, whatever they had to do to make that little thing pop up on the screen. And it beeps like, who has an email that beeps until you
Yeah,
come
it's
down?
in the basement and she can hear it in the kitchen. It's a very I grew up sort of, I was there when the internet was sort of becoming a thing. I was born in 81. You were born slightly before me. We were there at the beginnings of email. Do you know what I mean? And I can't think of a 1999 email being like that.
No.
Well, like
But it's the producer, so we need something dramatic. They're like, we can't just have text on a screen. It's got to pop up and it's got to be dramatic. And I mean, given her reaction, like she is very upset about it. I'm kind of surprised at that because, like, was she even ever to have that pop up on your computer? I guess is frightening, but I guess she all of a sudden realized what this meant and what kind of danger they were under in that moment because she basically kids and goes screaming out to her husband and says, "Oh my God, there's been this death threat."
And also, it does mention the kids, doesn't it? So I think,
It says you will all die.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's a threat against the entire family if they don't shut up.
yeah. And I think, for that sort of situation, maybe she thought he was in danger. But,
Right.
you bring her kids into it. That's got to be unbelievably terrifying. Especially when it comes from a little flying envelope that looks so cute and it would never harm a fly. And then, blood red.
Again, 1999. This is the era of that.
Yeah. No, it was because if the film came out in 1999, but I think the events took place in 1995 because you see on the front of the newspaper O.J. Simpson.
Okay, yes, that's right. You're right. Okay, so this is like a couple years previous. I get it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wigand tapes his interview with CBS and agrees to join a court case in Mississippi in order to try to circumvent his confidentiality agreement. CBS corporate interferes with the planned 60 Minutes broadcast, and a smear campaign against Wigand is launched while his family life falls apart. There is an interesting bit in the taping where, again, and you said, we don't find out what he knows until much later, which is the deposition. Even in the taping, it doesn't give away the big death knell, of information that he knows, because he just says, "Oh yeah, we're a tobacco delivery company," And I was like, "Yeah." And I was still like, I don't know what this guy has on them. And Lowell keeps saying, what does he have on them to have them this terrified?
But is this the part where he's talking about that specific chemical that he was upset about, or is that in the actual deposition?
I think that's in the deposition.
Because that is the part where he's getting really upset, and he gets like, they should not continue with this chemical, and they're talking about it affecting sales. Right, that is during the deposition. Okay, now that I remember.
Yeah. Or it's a conversation with Lowell, but it's about how they made it more addictive. They made it so that it hits your system faster or whatever. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that was in the CBS interview. But anyway, it's not the bit when they're cutting the clips together. It's never the bit that they're cutting together. And they interview him, and on screen on the CBS interview, he's saying, "Do I think it's worth it? Yes, I think it's worth it." He doesn't know that yet. Like, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't come out publicly. People don't know his name. Nothing seems to have happened yet that would cause him. I mean, he's already experiencing death threats and awful things going on in his life. But until that 60 Minutes broadcast, and until he does the deposition, he can sort of still back out of this. So I was like, you still have no idea what's coming for you. So I just don't think you can say, yes, it's worth it. Unless you want to be the guy who said that on TV, and then when you were assassinated, it makes you look really brave. Like,
this is part of the thing where he wants to get it out. He doesn't want to lose his nerve and go back on the actual interview. So that he wants to do the interview right away. He's very eager to get that done. And then he's going to go to the deposition. And that's what it really hits him, because on his way to Mississippi and he's under security, but this is right around when the security shows up, and his wife's very upset about that, of course, because he's got these security guards with him. He gets to the airport, and there's this very tense moment when this guy approaches him with selling American flags or something like that. He's got this little thing, and it's like he's selling them at the airport to raise money for something. But as soon as he turns towards him, one of the bodyguards is like, "Nope." And he takes him out of there. And so
that bit made me think of Airplane.
Yes. Little Harry Krish does an Airplane, yes. And then they're in the airport, and this guy says, "Jab," and like he knows him or something like that, and he hucks a thing of papers at him and says, "You've been served," and walks away. And so what they've done is they've done a gag order. This is coming from, again, the company Brown and Williamson, and they're saying he is not allowed to say anything. Basically, if he does, he's going to be held in contempt, and he will basically can be arrested as soon as he steps a foot back in Kentucky, which is where he lived, right?
Because they haven't upheld it in Mississippi. They took the gag order to a judge in Mississippi, and they said, "Does this stand here?" And that guy said no. Right. So I was like, is he going to have to like move to Mississippi?
Well, that's right. So my first thought, okay, I guess he can't go back to Kentucky if he decides to do this. Like, this is what the decision is that he's worried about, because he spends so much time hemming and hawing, and he's not sure even at the end when they actually are getting ready and everyone's like showing up at the courthouse for the deposition. Like, he's still not sure, right? This is right before he says fuck it and does the thing. But because there's all these cops around waiting for him to make up his mind, right?
Yeah. And I do think that is one of the most dramatic servings of papers I've ever seen. Like, I know they always like do things like they go, "Oh, did you order a pizza?" And they open the box and they're like, "You've been served," and that sort of stuff. But he flings paper at him. It's completely unnecessary. You've got his attention. You're gonna give him the papers. Why do you need to kill him with 1,000 paper cuts?
He gets scared of the bodyguards, honestly. He's scared of the bodyguards. That's what involves
there. Normally, like, in an envelope, you hand an envelope to somebody. And I know nothing about this. I'm just going off like what I've seen on telly. But to fling loose sheets of paper at him that, sort of explode all over the place was such a decision.
Yes.
And when Wygant gets into his sort of meeting with Richard Scruggs, and I think that is his actual house. I think they shot in the real house. Nice. When they're looking out over the ocean and everything. That's the real house that they used. He just says, "How does one go to jail?" Like, what happens to my family? And it's such a brilliant, again, a life of privilege of having never had to consider this before. Of like, that's how I'd feel. Like, what even happens when I go? Like, what? Tell me the logistics of going to jail. Like, my family will lose health insurance, and my wife will have to go to work, and she'll have to farm their kids out to work. And so he starts going through, all the logistics of what would happen if he went to jail. And I just started thinking that in every scene, I think from now on, I thought he was going to be shot, because that's how I think America works. Everyone,
that, right?
yeah, everyone has a gun at all times, and therefore someone's going to die. That's how I think it's going to work. And especially when he's walking into the deposition, and all those people are crowding around him, and they're all camera people and journalists and whatever. But how do you know that one of them doesn't have a gun? And I absolutely thought, this guy's they're gonna get him before he can.
Good. That's the time to do it, right? When you've got a bunch of people around, you can just get out of there quickly. Yeah, that was the moment.
Yeah.
That's not what they try and do here. He shows up, they get him in on the stand. Now, it's not a court. It's like he explained, this is not a trial. There's no judge. This is just a legal deposition. So basically, he's just being asked questions and answering the questions. That's all it is, and get it in the record for the case. But the lawyers from the tobacco company seem to think it's a trial, because they keep objection. And this is where Ron Motley, Bruce McGill, this is where he shines. This is my favorite scene in the film, because he is so amazing. And so this guy keeps saying objection. He's like, you have a stutter? Like, what is your problem? Your objection has been noted. Now shut up and let me talk to my client. And so even after that, the guy still tries, again, they're trying to bully him. They're trying to tell it, like, you are compelled, sir, by your confidentiality agreement, blah, blah, blah. You should not say a word. I basically order you to not say anything. And then again, he turns around, he gives them all hell.
In accordance with the force and effect of the temporary restraining order that has been entered against you by the court in the state of Kentucky. That means you don't talk. Mr. Motley, we have rights here.
Oh, you got rights. And lefts. Ups and downs and middles. So what? You don't get to instruct anything around here. This is not North Carolina, not South Carolina, nor Kentucky. This is the sovereign state of Mississippi's proceeding. Wipe that smirk off your face! Dr. Weigand's deposition will be part of this record. And I'm going to take my witness's testimony whether the hell you like it or not. Answer the question, Doctor.
He absolutely tears into him, and he's fantastic. And then what's brilliant is you get the reverse shot as he turns back towards Weigand, and he's just got this little smile on his face, like he's really enjoyed himself there.
Yeah, he's great. I just recently saw that actor in an episode of MacGyver that I was watching, and he was awesome in that as well. He's always great when he pops up in movies.
I saw him in Reacher. He was in the first season of Reacher.
Yeah, he's very good in that too. He's in lots of stuff. Also, the sheriff in My Cousin Vinny is another one of our favorites.
Which is on my list. I've never seen My Cousin Vinny, so yeah. Then so he does his deposition, and then we move back into the CBS world, and they have to have a meeting with corporate. Never a good thing when you're coming into a meeting with corporate. And these two characters, so the corporate and the head of the news division, they are based on real people, but they gave them different names. I do not know why. But Gina Gershon and is it Stephen Tobolowsky?
Yes, Ned Ryerson himself from Groundhog Day.
Yes, I know him from the sitcom One Day After Another.
Oh yeah, he's been in, again, so many little character actors in this. I love it. This movie.
And I love him. He's such a sweetheart in the other things I've seen, and then in this, like, he's not a terrible person, but like, he's on the wrong side.
Yeah. He's very diverse.
And they're talking about how they want to cut. They still want to air the piece, but they want to cut his Weigand's interview from it. Take him out. You can air the piece, because we're going to be sued for tortious interference. And Lowell says, tortious interference sounds like a disease caught by a radio. Brilliant, great. And he kind of gets the feeling that something else might be going on, because he's nothing if not an investigative journalist. So he gets Debbie, one of his team, to pull up all the recent filings. And we learn that CBS is currently in the process of being bought by someone. Yeah. So, of course, they don't want this court case hanging over them, because then they'll lose the deal. And this was where I got really excited, for possibly a completely wrong reason, but they were selling, the price was $81 a share. In the Newsroom Series 3, somebody wants to buy Atlantic News Company, and that is $81 a share. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I'm sure that's exactly the same amount as it was in the Newsroom. And it is. They're both $81 a share. And I think I kept trying to find out whether the Newsroom acknowledged if it took any inspiration from the film The Insider, but I couldn't find any.
Well, no, but I'll just interrupt you to say, if this is starting to sound familiar to our listeners, is because this recently happened to 60 Minutes as CBS was being purchased. Was it the Paramount thing? I can't remember which company owned them now. But they were being sold, or maybe it's Warner Brothers. Anyway, there was a sale about to happen, something, they wanted to go through, and there was a story about, I believe it was about Guantanamo Bay. And something about how people are being treated in Guantanamo Bay, and they decided not to air it. They cut it they did the exact same thing that happens in this movie. They cut it from the broadcast. And the funny part about it is that it actually aired in Canada, because the Canadian affiliate, the one that licenses the 60 Minutes content, aired the wrong version. So they put the first version, which they would have had in the thing ready to go, and then all of a sudden, because they did change it fairly last minute when they did this, and they said that day of, okay, here's the new version. And so the Canadian one didn't air it. They aired the original version, so it did get out there, and eventually it was on YouTube, and of course everywhere else after that.
But as I understand it, that wasn't about them being bought. That's after them being bought, because Barry Weiss was in charge. That was about Barry Weiss saying, we haven't got enough people to talk about this from the government's perspective, so we're going to pull it. It was a government thing.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't realize.
Still, the fact that it then aired in Canada, so many more people watched it than would have. And I don't think it was Guantanamo. I think it was an ICE thing. The descent.
Okay.
It was so recent.
It was very recent.
But yeah, and so it was absolutely the Streisand effect. They were like, oh, we can't air it because. So then more people talked about it. So then they didn't air it. So then more people watched it because of Canada.
What happened to Stephen Colbert recently as well, where they wouldn't let him air that interview with that politician. And then, of course, they put it on YouTube, and everybody goes to watch it on YouTube, and many more people see it than ever would have seen it if they just let him have his interview, right? Never tell a TV producer that he cannot air it the way he wants to air it. That is Lowell's position here, and I agree with him in a lot. Don't mess with them. They want editorial independence. They want to be able to report on what they report on without influence from this. And this is the worst reason in his mind to cut the story, right? Yeah. Because they're afraid of being sued. And the person that does it from is Mike Wallace, does not back him up. That is what happens. Is they're having this argument about it, and he's like, "Come on, Mike," and he's like, "Mike," he's like, "I'm with them on this. I don't think this is a good idea." Yeah. And he just walks out because he's so upset about that. He's like, "I have nothing. Mike Wallace isn't going to back you up. You have no leg to stand on."
Yeah.
And so he leaves. He's done with that conversation, right?
And that is seemingly the bit of the film that Mike Wallace was unhappy about, which you can understand, because it doesn't make him look great.
No, it makes him look like he cares more about his own best interest than about
his legacy, isn't it? Legacy is important to these people. The kind of people who might actually have a legacy. It's important to them. The other thing that's going on while all this is happening in CBS land is Leanne and what Jeffrey have had a conversation about how difficult she's finding it. And he says, I'm going to go to Mississippi, and when I come back, we will talk about it. And I said out loud in my flat, where there's no one else, I said, he's going to be gone when you get home. And yeah, I was absolutely right. She and the kids have gone. It's an empty house. And he moves into a very nice hotel. And I was like, how are you very nice hotel?
Well, maybe he's still getting the severance payments from the thing. He was probably very well paid as an executive of this tobacco company anyway. He's probably got a lot of money in the savings account. And it's the same hotel room that he met with Lowell in the beginning for some reason. He goes back there.
Well, we find out later that the reason he's in that room is because he's got a view of the B&W building opposite him, which again is something that they've taken from the Marie Brenner piece, where he was staying at the Hyatt and she went and had dinner with him, and they had dinner in the revolving hotel on the top of the Hyatt. And at one point he went, look what we're opposite. That's B&W. You see those lights that are still there? That's the legal department. They're the people who are going to ruin my life. And so that conversation that he has with Lowell on the phone, where he's staring across at this bit, that's a conversation that happened with somebody else. They just erased the woman. That's fine, I guess.
Manipulated me into this.
That's bullshit, Jeff.
You greased the rails.
I greased the rails for a guy who wanted to say yes. I helped him to say yes, that's all. You're not a robot, Jeff. Right? You got a mind of your own, don't you?
Up to you, Jeffrey. That's the power you have, Jeffrey. Vital insider information the American public need to know. Lowell Bergman, the hotshot who never met a source he couldn't turn around.
I fought for you, and I still fight for you.
You fought for me? You manipulated me into where I am now. Staring at the Brown and Williamson building. It's all dark except the 10th floor. That's the legal department. That's where they fuck with my life.
They were like, let's take this brilliant article that a woman's written and then never represent her at all in the film. I'm okay with it. I'm moving on.
Well, it's weird that it was Vanity Fair in the end, and it's because we have all these other journalistic entities like the Washington Post and New York Times involved in this, because the other thing that's happening is that there's this smear campaign. They get word of this story happening in the Washington Post, where all this other stuff from Wygand's past is coming up. He was previously married and he had a child, and his ex-wife has MS, and something, they were divorced, and there was like some kind of a there was a dispute over support and all kinds of stuff. It was a messy divorce, basically. And this happens. This is something that happens, but it's all being brought out into the spotlight by the Washington Post. I'm like, why do they?
It's not. It's being brought out by a guy called John Scanlon, who is played by Rip Torn, man with the best name, and what they do is they put together a dossier, a 500-page dossier, and then they send it to all of the newspapers.
So the Post is the one that's going with it, right?
And the Post is going with it, but also the Wall Street Journal is going with it, because that is who Lowell ends up talking to, saying push the deadline. That's where his contact is. So everyone's got this. Everyone can go with it. What I really liked was that we saw somebody approaching the ex-Mrs. Wygand, and we saw a video interview with her where she clearly states the divorce was a mutual agreement. We both wanted the divorce, and then you're in the room with the people putting together the dossier, just ignoring that completely. So they're very clearly in the film telling us this is lies. You know, they are putting out lies. Don't believe any of the stuff you're about to hear. And he calls Wygand, who has this new job as a teacher, brilliant sort of double teaching job, Japanese and chemistry, and he has this conversation on a payphone in the hallway.
That's
and
cool.
I'm just going, I don't think you should have this conversation in the hallway. Go ahead, find an office.
Yeah. Again, the public,
the kids are walking past.
this is like the height of payphone technology. This is when they were everywhere, when cell phones had not become ubiquitous, right? We didn't all have our own phones. And so you had to go and make a quick call. And there's a lot of that, like, call me back in 10 minutes or do this. A lot of the conversations are happening through phones, because that was a very common way of doing that. You would never see this happening this way now. It would all be emails and text messages and that kind of stuff. Nobody would be picking up a phone in this world. Are you kidding me? And you notice in that scene, the students are looking at him because he gets agitated and he gets upset. And he's yelling. There's also a moment when the guy walks by that is the same guy that was interviewing the ex-wife, wasn't it? Did you notice that?
I thought.
Yeah, but it was what was he doing at the school? That was weird. I feel like there was something that was cut that we didn't quite see, where he was also at the school doing something. But I thought it was the same guy. He's like, I'm an investigator. I'm here to discuss da-da-da. He gets the original Mrs. Wygant to let him in to talk about the divorce. I'm sure that was the same guy that walked past him in the hallway at the school.
Yeah, there was a very obvious dude walking past him at one point. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe there was like him going into.
How does he was doing at the school? I have no idea, because that never really came up.
And so Lowell is like reaching out to people to kind of stop this smear campaign from getting out. And this was the thing. This is the thing that always annoys this whole, a lie will travel around the world before the truth even gets its pants on. Principled people get fucked over precisely because they have principles. Like, he wants to say these people just put together a document that isn't true and they send it out and people don't check it. Yes. They go, okay, then we will print this information. In the meantime, Lowell says to his guy at the Wall Street Journal, don't print it. I've got 2 PIs going around checking the information. Don't print it until, I can tell you all the stuff that isn't true. And this guy's like, I'm not pushing the deadline for you. And he's like, yeah, but it's the reputation of your paper and stuff. But it takes Lowell time and money and people to then organize to be able to get the information out that this isn't true. And by then, nobody cares. I mean, it turns out in the film they do. It does make a difference. But it's just the fact that you can say anything, but the principled people, they're the ones that are looking for 3 sources before they go ahead. They need 3 independently verified sources before they will report something. But the people who don't care will report anything.
And that happens. It does get reported by a TV station. Some TV station does put out the report and does put it out there. But he's basically doing the guy's job for him. Like at the Journal, if you get that report, you say, okay, this is interesting. Now, who else can we find to back this up? Who else can we find to confirm this? And so Lowell does their job for them by getting these PIs to actually look into the background. They interview the actual people who were involved and get the real story. So he eventually can get that information to the guy and say, he's like, okay, fine, I'll hold it for a week while we look at this stuff. Like, and then they basically come back. Apparently in the end, don't they just like turn it around on the tobacco industry and just call them out for what they tried to do as a smear campaign? Isn't what they end up doing with that?
Yeah, because you see the shot with Don Hewitt, Philip Baker Hall, in the car with Rip Torn, John Scanlon, looking at this newspaper article about how everything that the Post published was absolute bullshit. And he like turns to him and he goes, "You're full of shit." And it's great. And in the meantime, it appears, I don't know whether we get confirmation, but that Lowell has leaked to the Associated Press that CBS is pulling this interview. And so he is sent on vacation.
Yeah, I love that. And that's when we get the beach conversation. He's on the beach on vacation and they're talking about it. I made a note here. This is a pre-YouTube era. If YouTube had existed, he could have just uploaded that to YouTube and had it out there, and nobody could have stopped him from doing that, right? So it's a completely different era now. He sees this as being like, it's being censorship. He's never going to get this out, although he keeps fighting for it.
Yeah. And it's great because it's like a whistleblowing about a whistleblower not being allowed to whistleblow. It's very late.
Yeah. But this is what happens, and this is what did happen when 60 Minutes pulled that segment, right? Other media outlets report on it. That's what you do, and then he ends up going. So he takes that, and from that he ends up going to the New York Times with the whole sordid affair, as they say, right? Everything that happened behind the scenes, all the stuff that they just talked about, he gave it all to the New York Times, as a piece. So New York Times can now report on all this weird shit happening, 60 Minutes, compromising their journalistic integrity for the sake of the corporation, right? For the sake of the company. That's what this is about.
And that's where we get the whole I will not end my days wandering in the wilderness of National Public Radio. But what's great is Mike Wallace, he comes in to see Lowell and says, you know, I've done this whole bit. I did a 3-minute interview and they're going to air it about how it's messed up that we can't show this. I tore them a new one. It's going to be on the air. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. I've fixed everything. And then he sees the report and they have cut his entire interview to them asking him, you know, do you think he's got vital information that the public should know? And he says yes. And that's it. That's all they air. So they've absolutely screwed him, and he is livid.
This Sunday, Wallace will broadcast a report on the tobacco industry, including the tough tactics tobacco companies employ to keep a lid on information that might be damaging. Is there information that people should have that they're not going to have because you're not going to broadcast this interview?
Yes.
Today, CBS News President Eric Cluster defended the network's decision not to broadcast key portions of the controversial interview. Mr. Cluster said, quote, the atmosphere is tougher than ever.
Where's the rest?
Dan?
Where the hell's the rest?
Nebraska football fans voiced their criticism.
You cut it.
Coming up in Bernard Goldberg's America.
You cut the guts out of what I said.
It was a time consideration, Mike.
Bullshit. You corporate lackey. Who told you your incompetent little fingers had the requisite skills to edit me?
And again, it's this thing. He was kind of okay with it until they pissed him off. You know, he's a bit like Jeffrey in that way.
This happens with these anchors, and I've encountered this in my experience in this field, is that they have very big egos because they're on TV, they're a center of attention, they have lots of fans who, like, you know, say they love their work and and so he's like, I gave them 3 minutes, and he expects them to air all of those 3 minutes, right? The entire 3-minute interview, and they cut it down to one quick 1-word clip. Like, that's a complete insult to him, right? That is just like, oh.
Yeah. And he is so angry. And he says one of my favorite lines: who told you your incompetent little fingers have the requisite skills to edit me? Oh my God. And then Gina Gershon walks out of her office and says, Mike. And he's like, Mr. Wallace. Like, he is so angry at everyone. And he's now on the, well done. You flipped him.
And so where are we at now? I don't remember where we're at with the Paul. We're into the follow-up.
It's that he's in this hotel. Jeffrey Wigand is in this hotel and he's staring at the B&W offices, which we don't know until he's on the phone. Lowell is desperately trying to get hold of him. And I have been, ever since he'd moved into the hotel, I was now waiting for him to take his own life.
Yes.
And the window is open. And I'm like, oh, he's going to jump out the window. And I was so convinced that this was going to happen. And Lowell is on the phone trying to get through to him, and he's ignoring the phone, and he's just sitting in his chair. And you don't know if that's a body in the chair or not. Like, that's the other thing I was thinking. He might have taken his own life in another way, and he might just be sitting in this chair, and we don't know. And Lowell calls into the hotel, gets the manager of the hotel up to Wigand's room, and they open the door, but it's on the catch, it's on the chain, so he can't get in. And he's making the manager talk to Wigand through the door. And he's trying to reason with him and do all this stuff and be polite and, you know, be the manager of the hotel. And then Lowell says, tell him to get on the fucking phone. And the manager, like, really struggles with the swearing. It's a really brilliant moment.
No, that's goes against every fiber of my being.
Yeah, I can't swear at a guess, you know. So
who does it?
Yeah, and he does it. And the minute that happens, Lowell does know how to work him. He's out of that chair and he's on that phone and he's screaming at him, you know. There's also a bit where Lowell goes to Lincoln for some reason.
To where?
Lincoln was it a place called Lincoln? We have one of those. It's where my nephew lives. And he like goes into this cafe and he meets these two people and he's like, what are you going to do here? And they're like, we're geologists. And he looks at their hands and then he calls his guy at the FBI and says, yeah, your geologists don't have gnarly enough hands. And I was like, okay, so they're FBI people. Why are they there? And the FBI guy says, you got to hold off. Don't say anything because I can give you something better if you don't do this. And at this point, I was like, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know why he's going back to the FBI about anything.
Because there's that other story that he was talking to that guy about at the FBI, that something's going on there.
It was the Unabomber.
Oh yeah, the Unabomber. That's right. Well, but those two guys are agents. Those two people he goes and talks to, agents, and they're undercover. They're in the middle of an operation, and basically he's figured it out. So he calls his buddy and says,
"It wasn't really clear. We're obviously both confused."
No, we are, because again, this is him shifting around different stories, right? He's always shifting between these different stories. This is a different story he's working on, and at the end, the guy says, "He's okay. Here's your 3 hours." Although he says, "Have him be here on Tuesdays." So that's more than 3 hours they're giving him. But basically, have him be here, and then he'll get 3 hours notice when we're going to bust something. It was some story, but I don't think it had anything to do.
No, it didn't. And the reason he was getting that was as a negotiation. He was like, I have this information. Like he was saying to the FBI, I know your guys are in Lincoln because I've just been and seen them, and they're geologists, but their hands aren't gnarly enough. Yeah. And so he's blackmailing the FBI, and I can't remember why. But so the FBI guy says, if you hold off on the other thing, and I can't remember what the other thing is, we will give you a heads up for the Unabomber. So one of the final scenes we see is CBS having an exclusive and having the footage of them arresting the Unabomber, which no one else has.
I think that's all that is.
But I can't remember like what that had to do with the Jeffrey Wigand story and whether it did.
I don't think it did. Because all I had here, I was looking at a summary of it, and it says that once Wallace flips, Wallace comes on the other side, they pissed him off. Wallace is pissed off at Lowell for the New York Times piece, but he finally comes back to his side and says, like, he explains why he was so worried about it and why it's so important to him that he doesn't want the company to be taken over by a tobacco company. That's the fear, I guess, right? Is that they would basically take over CBS and then be able to do what they wanted with it. So he's very afraid of that. But then he does to come on his side. And once he has that leverage, again, once Mike Wallace agrees to it, they can't really say no to him. So they will air the piece. And then they do it like the right way. They go through the whole thing. They kind of say, okay, here's what happened. Here's what we wanted to do. Here's what they told us we couldn't do. And they explain the entire piece from beginning to end. And they kind of like come clean about the whole thing. That's basically how they agree to end it. Right.
And you get to see everybody watching it. So like Lowell, Jeffrey has his kids with him.
Yeah.
Obviously, he gets to see his kids like twice a week. And so and he's made them spaghetti, and they're watching this 60-minute segment. And one of the things he says when he finds out that he isn't going to be in the segment, and he's like, what did I do all this for? He says to him, that he needs for my kids to have seen it, for them to know why I've put them through what I did. You know, because the other thing as well, like I say, he's like an accidental whistleblower as presented in this film. I'm not sure it really worked like that, but he did go through with it. So he wasn't even, so it's kind of even worse that he didn't have this massive drive to stick it to the man and, you know, bring down the tobacco industry, but he did it anyway. And then they said to him, you're not going to do it now. And he's like, I didn't only risk it, I lost everything for you. And there's nothing, I have nothing now. And now you're not going to even air it. So what was it all even for? Which is why we get at the end Lowell quitting 60 Minutes. Because he just basically says, I can't, what am I meant to say to a source now? Like, right. Our integrity is gone.
Every time. This could happen anytime I do this and I put my neck out for a source. You guys are going to compromise me. So guess what? He ends up in public broadcasting. He ends up on PBS, which is perfect. That's where you're going to get no interference from any corporate overlords, because there's none in that world.
But also, the sources will know. So he can't even approach sources now and say, come to CBS, we'll look after you, because they won't.
No.
And they know it. So he can't, he has lost any integrity with that show to try and get the kind of stories that he was doing before. So it is, I would say that's a good decision from him.
Yeah, for sure. That was again, it's very great film. I had again, I really enjoyed it. It really felt relevant to everything that's happening in the world right now. Like, honestly, with all the stuff that this touches on, I'm like, this could be made right now. And it would be like, other than the technology aspect of it, which was I found very quaint and nostalgic, and it kind of made me wish we were back in that world. I do really miss, like, payphones were awesome. I used to use them all the time. I remember when payphones went from 25 cents to 50 cents, the price doubled. And I was like, what? But that was the moment when payphones started to go up because it became too expensive to operate. And so you started to see less and less of them. But anyway, I really, really loved this film. I thought it was great.
I think it's yet another testament to how news shouldn't be a business.
Yes, exactly. Right. This shows corporate news is not a good mix. It should not be a for-profit model. There's been a lot of talk about that here in Canada as well, because we have 3 TV channels that kind of have their own news. Each has their own news department or whatever, and each they will do their own local and national versions of it. And then we have the CBC, which is the public broadcaster, like your BBC, very much government funded, but they operate independently. So the CBC will do really, really good journalism. They have steady funding, and they have like good people working there who have been there for a long time. But the other 3 companies are in free fall. They are all very much struggling. They're all like their business model of like traditional radio and cable TV. They're all owned by cable companies. So like it's those companies that they're also owned by phone companies. So there's all these weird, like, it can't just be news. It has to be news with this other thing. I hate that idea. I want a news organization to just do news, and that's it. And it should be a nonprofit. There should be some sort of, like, we have some government funding in place to help news organizations, but it's not nearly enough. And again, I could go off on this soapbox all day long. I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, you're not rambling. You're absolutely right. It was just, like I say, having just watched The Newsroom and then following it up with this. The whole idea, of clickbait headlines and all that sort of stuff, and rage baiting. The news should not rage bait us. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
And I gotta tell you that I did that, like, when I worked at CTV, which was one of the networks, one of the Canadian, it stands for Canadian television. And I worked in a local newsroom. We would get a lot of direction from head office on what to do, and they would follow that direction. And a lot of it was things like write a headline in a specific way to get people to click. It was how to write a clickbaity headline, which I hate myself personally. I'm like, oh my God, you're going to make me write this shit? And they did. And I did, because they paid me for it. But that's where they were going with it. And it was all about chasing viral stories. One of my most common assignments was to, like, this funny thing happened on Facebook and they posted about it and the post went viral. So we also want a post to go viral. So we're going to mimic that and you're going to do a story on it. So that's doing that. And that's also like a horrible way to conduct journalism. So all these other factors get in there and it's weird. And I will say I've also done news for CBC, for the public broadcaster. And when I worked there, it felt a lot like a government job. It was very weird. But it is a government job. And in that it means that nobody is rushing. Everyone's going to get their job done. And you're going to do it the most logical and, like, matter of fact way. You're not going to worry about what other people think. You're not going to change the way you do things just because other people are. That's the way the CBC operates. And they do a really good job, I think. They are the strongest media outlet in Canada, but it's because they have consistent funding, and the other companies are in bad shape. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some of them fold in the next few years, because I think they're really doing.
Or be bought out by that one guy who buys everything.
Right, exactly, right. And so we see that the whole billionaire holding the media outlet. We see what Jeff Bezos has done to the Washington Post. So that's not a good model either. It's just a big mess. Like, journalism is in rough shape for sure. This film is like the beginning of it, right? This is 1999, shows how it's happening back in the 90s, 95 rather. You said this happened in 95. So this is 30 years ago, and it has just gotten worse since.
Yeah. Well, that was a nice note to thanks to me for picking such a cheery film. Yay! You know me, I love a cheery film. What was your Letterboxd rating?
I would give this a 4.5 out of 5. I loved it. I thought it was so good. It's just a little bit too long in my mind. I really like a good 2-hour movie, and this is 2.5. But again, it didn't feel too long. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my, at one point I realized, oh crap, there's still an hour left, but I was still, like, engaged in what was going on. I wasn't, like, bored of it. It just, it could more concisely.
I gave it a 4 simply because it isn't Erin Brockovich.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right. Okay, so I thought a lot about where to go from this. You gave me a lot of options. Again, there are so many little places I could jump. I could do what you did and take a minor character from the previous film and translate to like a few second appearance into the next
Yeah,
film.
he wasn't even like a big part in Josie and the Pussycats. So I took like a 5-minute role and I turned it into a 0.5 second role. I'm very proud of me.
I did get the feeling there was probably more to his character. There were probably cut scenes or more scenes of him at home with his family. This is Al Pacino's family, so there's probably stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor, right? That he's in.
Can I just say, I did like the line when Lowell was talking to Wygant about his family, and he's like, "Do you have kids?" And Lowell's like, "Yeah, they actually have 5 kids between them. I think him and Shan."
Okay.
But they have 2 in the film, and he goes, "Yeah, we have 2. I have 2 kids. One of them's hers, one of them mine. Everybody calls everybody something different." And it was just like, what bricks? You don't call him dad, you call him Lowell, but he's dad, and then that's mum, but that's Sharon. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it was a great line. Okay, so we could have gone off of that. I could have jumped off of Confure, Canadian Treasure Confure, but I have a feeling he's going to come back in our podcast. I think I'm going to save that one because I've got a couple great Confures. Stephen Tobolowsky, of course, has been in so many different movies. I could pick many of those. Debbie Mazar, who has like no lines in this, and I feel like she's wasted because all she does is like read a newspaper over him. That's her one big scene is when she's reading a newspaper to him over the phone because he's off wherever he is on vacation and he doesn't have access to the New York Times, I guess.
I did enjoy at the breakfast meeting that I think she had half a line, I would say, and the rest of the time she was just eating. She was having a great time.
Not a lot of work for Debbie Mazar in that shoot, but no, I'm actually going to jump off of one of the stars of this film because there is an Al Pacino movie that I have not yet seen that I really feel like I should have seen by now, and that is Dog Day Afternoon.
I love Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, you've seen it? Okay, I've never seen it. I missed it. It's been, one of the...
Not only have I seen Dog Day Afternoon, I've seen the documentary about the guy that Dog Day Afternoon is based on.
Oh, cool. Well, then you should have a lot to add to this discussion then. I look forward to it.
No, I'm not going to remember any of it.
It might come back to you. You never know. This stuff might come back to you as you watch the movie and are reminded of that.
The guy who stars alongside him, that's the guy who, I think he only made 5 films before he died, and every single one of them was nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, yes. He was also in The Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And this is one of Pacino's like most celebrated performances. It's after The Godfather, but it was like one of his big movies, and again, I've never seen it, so I want to see it. So let's watch it.
I think you're like, I think it's a great film, so very excited to watch that one again.
That's going to do it for another episode of Transatlantic Watch Party. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep watching movies.